Man, I was listening to this video for the last hour and 5 minutes. Went to the gym, left the gym, and continued to listen to the video. Went and got some food, and then I just came home, right? And, this goes right to what I was talking about because the ammo.com video that they did on the Second Amendment, right? Balanced video. For the most part, I'll say it was a balanced video. But when this same individual gets over to South Africa, it's like all of a sudden he doesn't really see how the injustices perpetrated by whites created and facilitated the whole situation that he's bitching about. And you'll see a lot of white people do this when they talk about South Africa. They immediately go into, the killing the farmers and the murders of the farmers and all that stuff, right? Which is horrible, right? And the South Africans, these black South Africans that go to the farms, and, the killings are over the top. They're like coup de grace. It's like, literal rape and pillage, murder, fuck the wife in front of the children and in front of the husband and kill the whole family. Like, I don't know if y'all remember what was it? Was it the Pettifords? What was the name of the Pettits? I think it was the Pettit family in Connecticut, where the husband crawled out the basement window and, the criminals, they, murdered raped the daughter and then burned the family members alive and stuff like that. Just crazy stuff, right? So the white people, they immediately go to that. And the thing is, here's how I feel about it, right? And because even when the guy making the video, he said that when he talks to other people, he didn't say what race the people were. They kind of feel like the white South Africans deserve it. That's just kind of like the general idea. You know what I mean? They know about apartheid. They know how messed up apartheid was. And they're just kind of like, well, whatever they get now, it's like, they totally deserve it. And like I said, see, white people believe in generational wealth. But for some reason, when it comes to the crimes and the transgressions of their ancestors, they don't believe in generational debt. I find that very interesting. Generational wealth, but not generational debt. It's kind of the same thing that we saw with the what was it? The global economic crisis, where corporations believe in privatization, but then when it comes to the economy collapsing, then they need a bailout, and it's all about, corporate welfare, right? But when they're making profits, it's not corporate charity, right? It's not, hey, let's share the wealth. It's not a whole bunch of philanthropy, right? When corporations are doing extremely well and we cracked, billions of dollars in the fourth quarter, like, let's build schools and universities and give back to the community. No, they don't do that. They say this is our money, but then when the shit collapses, then they go, we need a bailout with taxpayer dollars. And that's how I see a lot of these white people who like to bitch about like what's transpiring in South Africa or even in America for that matter, like all the angry black people at racism and white supremacy. And they're so desperate to try to call black people's response to white supremacy racism, which doesn't make any sense. I'm like, no, it's the response. And at the beginning of the video, he pointed out one of the same thing that I said, which is that, it's like nobody ever pays for the crime. The crime is done. It happened. Nobody ever pays for the crime. And all white people do is tell black people, you need to get over it. And that's it. Every time. It's the same shit every time. That's why I said, like, no more. Black people can't let white people get away with shit. Because if they die, if the person that committed the crime or the sin or whatever if they get away with it and they die, the rest of white people will say, oh, well, it died with them. That's the end of it. I don't owe you shit, but I'll gladly sit here and snatch up and take all these benefits. Oh, but the debt? Oh no, we don't have nothing to do. They died. They're in the ground. Take it up with their grave. But I'm like, but you sitting on, millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars or thousands. You sitting on money that was produced off of the transgressions of your ancestors. Why don't you give that up? Oh no, that's mine. That was passed down to me. I'm like, and again, you start to see this pattern where the injustices, they can't be passed down, but the wealth from the injustices can be passed down. This is the bullshit of white supremacy. This is the bullshit of white people logic, as I like to call it. It's the bullshit of it. So I'm like, okay, so clearly we can't let y'all get away with nothing, because this is what transpires. And the whole, like, I wish that black people in these countries were, more organized and everything was really focused in terms of what they do. But it's like, it's like, and this is what's so messed up, because I think that South Africa is doomed. I think it's doomed to failure. I think it's a failed state, and I think that the same thing's going to happen in South Africa that happened in Uganda with Idi Amin kicking out the Asians, and what happened in why am I going blank? What happened in what's the name of the damn country? I can't think of what the name where Mugabe was. Zimbabwe. I think it's going to be the same situation. Where this is what happens. This is how it goes down, right? So the white people come in there, they steal everybody's land and shit, right? This guy is saying that they bought. I don't doubt that there were white people that bought, some of the land, but the vast majority of that land was taken. That cannot be overlooked, right? So they come in, they take the land, then they import, the Indians. Right, that's what happened, in South Africa. They bring the Indians in to work the railroads and stuff like that. Right, it's just so crazy how, I guess you can't enslave people in their own nation. Right, you can't enslave them in their own country because they know where to run to. So it's like in the Americas, you're right. They tried to enslave the Native Americans, and the Native Americans would just run away. They knew where to run to and knew where to hide. So they had okay, we'll bring some Africans that they don't know where to run to. Then they go in South Africa, and it's like, okay, we're not going to enslave the South Africans. We'll go and we'll grab some Indians and make them, work the land and whatnot, because I guess we can't enslave the South African, the actual black South Africans. I don't know. That's always been strange to me. I'm like, why are you importing these people? But anyway, so they go and the British go, they import the Indians. Indians come over, and so the Indians have been there. I actually know a guy that I used to work out with, and his father was from Uganda. He was a Muslim guy, Muslim Pakistani guy, and his father was from Uganda, lost everything in Uganda, and I think, this had to be maybe probably somewhere in the 2000, the early 2000s. He went back to, his father just went back to Uganda to try to claim some land. I don't know what the deal was, but that was the whole situation. But what gets me is you'll have the situation where, hold on, I'm losing my train of thought. The white people come in there, and then they take the land, and then they exploit the land or exploit the labor of the people. Anyway, the point is they leave Europe, and I've talked about this before. Europe only had kings, queens, and peasants. And so, Europe didn't have enough resources and land and wealth to basically sustain the European people. So they left and went around the world, basically just invaded every other place in the world and exploited those resources or exploited the labor of those people. And that's how Europe became wealthy. Okay. And the situation that you see in South Africa now, it's you have these people and they're uneducated. or they don't have the same skill sets as the Europeans that come there. And so, in South Africa, the black people, you got the ANC, black people take over. And one of the points he made in the video was how they have all these, you know, non-producing jobs, government jobs, cushy jobs, right? And I totally agree with the point that he made about that, because a lot of times this is what happens when you end up with black people who are deprived of their titleship, deprived of, any sort of recognition, deprived of any sort of titles, deprived of any sort of acknowledgement. And again, like white people, they come in there and they set this whole system up where you see the hierarchies, you see the roles, you see the titles, right? You see what's the word that I'm looking for? This sort of, this is a person to be respected because they hold this title, such and such. And, black people become infatuated with that. And then in situations like this, if you wave the magic wand, give black people all the power, right? They kind of like just skip over all the logistics on how behind white people's power, it's not just a title, but they actually have to do things within the structure. That's not to say every single white person. There's white people that are running around with cushy jobs and don't do shit. But overall, there's enough white people that get shit done, which is what makes their whole thing work. A lot of black people, they'll get in there and they see the cushy jobs and they see the titles and stuff, and they're not producing anything. And so, eventually that is going to collapse. You need people with the actual skills. You need people in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. That's what you need. And so what frustrates me about listening to any white person talk on this is like the white South Africans. I'm like, you created this situation. They took full advantage. We're living cushy all through the apartheid and all that, right? They did all that. And then now you have these black Africans, because the world wouldn't stand for South African apartheid, right? I believe they were getting sanctions and all of the type of shit. So the world wouldn't stand for it because it was so blatant. It was just so blatant. The world couldn't stand for it. I told you, white supremacy does not like overt racism. Especially, with the advancement of technology and robotics and, the discovery of gasoline and everything. Like, hey, look, we don't need these people for labor and stuff like that. And again, they want to be the face of benevolence, right? They want to be the moral compass of the world. They can't do that with such blatant discrimination and racism there, right? Aside from the fact that the tenets, of their democracies won't stand for it. The very words on the papers that they write that talk about what a democracy is and why they love democracy and everything, it won't stand for such gross, inequality and racist policies and stuff like that. So if they're going to do it, they got to hide it. And South Africa was one of those nations that was just so blatant that it couldn't stand. So they got rid of the apartheid, right? And so, but nothing really changed. You still have black people living in the shanty towns. There wasn't any sort of real, integration. ANC takes over, and you have a bunch of black people in government. And there's another thing that black people are really bad with. They go off and, I'm going to appoint my uncle and my cousin and my brother and my sister and it's like all these relatives. Nobody knows the difference between, shit from piss, right? And so they go in there and again, they don't know how to run anything. So it's like the white people will sit there and be like, oh, the niggas, they don't know how to do anything. And I'm like, they don't know how to do anything because you intentionally kept the knowledge from them. You weren't trying to educate these people. You didn't go there, with your benevolent foot forward and said, hey, let's trade with the Africans on, in some sort of, that's in a way that respects their humanity and, bring them up to, our standards of civilization and show them the way. Like, no, that's not what white people went in there like, here's some motherfuckers that we can exploit. Here's some people on some land that we can also exploit. And that's what they did for hundreds of years. And so now you got a population of black people that are the byproducts of, yet again, the phrase prolonged exposure to poverty, and they're trying to like use like they're trying to say that, oh, well, see, these black people are just like that and they can't do anything, and see, it's just because they don't want to work hard and they can't do what we do. And I'm like, again, Mr. Superior Race, I'm like, you weren't going to teach them how to do what you do. And the black people need to recognize, this aspect. Like, you do need to know what they do. But like, here's the whole problem. This is why I say South Africa is doomed and it's going to fail and it's a failed state. I totally feel the South Africans on, that's our motherfucking land. All you bitches need to get the fuck out and you need to leave. I totally feel them on that. You know what I mean? I was talking to a Pakistani dude. I had to explain the shit. I'm like, what don't you get about this, right? Because he's feeling some type of way because he got, all his Pakistani peoples in Durban and shit. I'm like, what don't you get about this? The British brought you here. That's like me being sent to, like the British bring black people to Pakistan. So the British bring 100,000 black people to Islamabad. So now we're all in Islamabad, and the British, let's say they gave the black people a leg up in society, in terms of bank loans and, in terms of business and whatnot, right? They deemed the black people the smarter race. There's still a hierarchy, white people at the top, blacks in the middle, and Indians at the bottom. And then after, 200-300 years, right, the black people in India own all the businesses, own all the stores, and the Pakistanis live in abject poverty. I'm like, and then the black people got the audacity to stand up and say, we're just hardworking. And what are you Indians mad about? What are you Pakistanis mad about? Right? That's literally the equivalent of what Indians and Pakistanis are saying and the Muslims are saying about black people in South Africa. I'm like, dude, it's their land. Like, no, bro, you don't belong here. It's not your land. It's not your country. It's not. You know what I mean? And one of the things that the guy tried to bring up is, the Bantu expansion, and they went in and they took over the land of the Khoisan, or however you say it, right? So they go and they're talking about that. I'm like, no, bro, you're not going to do that. We're not going to play that game. You know what I mean? Europeans been fighting over land and space, forever. That's European issues in Europe, where Europeans are supposed to be. Right? Like, I mean, let's talk about the Russians taking over the Baltics and taking over Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Let's talk about Germany invading Poland and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? They've been fighting over to having territorial disputes forever. You know what I mean? But the fact of the matter remains that white people showed up on the shores of South Africa and basically took that bitch over and then made it to where the majority of the black people live in abject poverty, and the majority of white people are living these, middle class to wealthy lives, right? You got De Beers and all that shit, the diamonds and everything. I mean, white people fought 2 wars over that shit. The fucking Boer Wars. They were fighting over that shit. So, slaughtering each other. It's amazing. Imagine if I use that and we're like, well, so what if the blacks are killing the South Africans? I mean, look at the Boer Wars. Isn't that white on white violence? So what's the problem with the South Africans killing the white people? Like, what if I try to use that type of fucking logic, which isn't logic? But unfortunately, and this is the whole problem. This is the whole problem, globally speaking, with black people and white folks and capitalism. Capitalism is white folks' system. It is. I mean, through and through, it's white folks' system. Okay? Haiti had the slave revolt. And what did the European powers do? They blackballed Haiti. We're not trading with them. Went from the wealthiest colony in the Western Hemisphere to the poorest, right? The poorest. Africa. We saw this with Zimbabwe, right? Mugabe started taking the land back, giving it back to the Africans to which it belonged. And, European powers put on sanctions. right? Because remember, the World Bank and all that shit, the IMF, all that, like they even have a law about it that only Europeans can be a president of the IMF and shit. It's on paper, it says that, right? All this shit with the Swiss banks and all that stuff, they control the whole monetary system. So, and white people are not going to just give up some shit without a fight. They're going to have sanctions and they're going to fuck with your money and they're going to do all this other stuff. It's like what I said about like one of the reasons why I don't even really feel like reparations for slavery in America would work, because there would be, hidden taxes and shit. You go and buy a car and then there'd be some bitter white person and they would give other white people one fee and then give black people another fee. Like today's white people do not want to pay for the transgressions of their ancestors, which is why the inequality persists and why we continue to see these problems and why these problems will not go away and why there will be constant and persistent racial tensions between black people and white people. That's why it's just going to continue, because they're not going to come up off the money. Plain and simple. They'll find some way. They're not going to come up off the land. They're not going to take the L. They're not going to take a loss. They're not going to do it. So, if the black people took all the land back, you got the whole problem with them not being educated and skilled and being able to do what the white folks are doing, because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skill, right? They haven't been doing it. They're not in practice. And then the whole economy, all the trucks that go up and down the roads and, the whole infrastructure is dominated, operated, owned, and controlled by the whites. Even if the South Africans kick out all the white people, okay, where's the economy at now? Kick out all the Indian people. Where's the economy at now? Who's going to trade with South Africa? What, other African nations that are also struggling and have their own, economic issues? Who's going to trade with South Africa? So, unfortunately, I think that South Africa is it's a failed state. I mean, a couple more weeks, you're going to have a serious, not even a couple more weeks. Yeah, maybe a couple weeks. A couple is two. So, you're going to see a huge humanitarian crisis, because, the folks are not going to be able to get food. Like, this is the whole problem with the logistics of black people tackling, white supremacy. I talked about this when I talked about the whole concept of, any place is better than here. And I'm like, I get the sentiment, I get the feeling, right? But again, like, black people haven't established enough themselves independent of white people to where, they have that, that sort of ability to just go cold turkey. We're entirely, black people as a whole are entirely too dependent on white people for their infrastructure. And truth be told, that's the way that white people want it. And then they try to, again, use it against you and say, oh, well, see, y'all can't, fend for yourselves. You can't do this for yourselves, Same bullshit they did with Haiti, right? Again, black people freed themselves from slavery. Then Haiti was blackballed. And then white people, see, the niggas, they can't govern themselves. Look at Haiti. It's a failed state, right? The talking point that, white supremacists and white nationalists like to run with. So, and there was another point that I was going to make. Hold on, it's coming to me. I remember. And what really gets me? Like, about just South Africa, when he was talking about the farmers being killed and everything. Because I'm going to be real. It's terrible, it's horrible, it's tragic, it's all that shit. But I really can't shed a tear based off of all the shit that white people have done. And all the countless millions of lives, where black people, have died and been maimed and all that shit. Like those torturous inventions and shit that they had, and freaking Django and whatnot. I told you I did a video on it talking about white people. They want to talk about how black people out here are savages and they're demonic and everything. I'm like, y'all the ones that come up with all the torture devices and all that shit. You'd be hard pressed to go in Africa and find torture devices. Like white people, they have torture devices and then give them names, the Iron Bowl and shit like that, and or what is it, the Bronze Bowl, cooking people alive and shit like that. The what is it, the breaking wheel, all this crap they come up with. But yet, it's the black Africans, they're some savages. It's so irritating. But anyway, I'm saying what really just gets underneath my skin is I'm like, yo, have the same energy, fam. You know what I mean? You want to talk about the atrocities in South Africa and what the South Africans are doing to white people? Like, again, have the same energy. You know what I mean? Like, let's talk about Shark Island. Have the same energy, fam. Let's talk about, what the Ku Klux Klan was doing to African Americans. Have the same energy. If you're going to be all outraged because, this white family was attacked and all this other shit. I remember when they did the same shit with the LeBarons down in Mexico, that whole Mormon family that got killed that was related to Mitt Romney and whatnot. Everybody wants to talk about, these Mexicans and they killed the white people and they killed the babies and all this other shit, right? Completely ignoring the fact, again, white people dropped a nuclear bomb on women and children, 2 nuclear bombs on women and children. But there was, what about the babies and the LeBaron family and all this other stuff? But they didn't want to tell you about how the LeBarons, again, are controlling, the vast amount of the damn water there, and the other farmers can't grow their crops. You see what I'm saying? Again, there's just all this, we got here first. Right? Or we stole it. We won this conflict, or we won this war. So that justifies us being here even after borders, have been drawn. I mean, the entitlement it's insane that you can have a group of people that goes somewhere halfway around the world. You know what I mean? I remember when they had the what was it, the defense minister of Iran. And he was up there and he was talking to me, the news person that was interviewing him, was like, the hostile activity that Iran is doing and the aggressions of Iran. He was like, hold on, bro. Hold the fuck up. I'm not the one that's 3,000 miles, away from my border. I was like, got him. You talking about the U.S. Iran is being hostile. Just imagine if there was some Iranian ship, 200 miles off the U.S. coast. Oh my God, it'd be like the biggest news ever, right? They'd be going crazy. Oh my God, it's gonna be World War III. Ah! But here you got the U.S. 200 miles off of in the Persian Gulf, off of the coast of Iran. I don't even know if the Persian Gulf is even 200 miles across. I don't know how wide it is. You know what I mean? But I'm saying basically you got the ship sitting there right on the coast, with all those missiles and all the type of shit that they got. Like, I'm just saying, like, the sense of white entitlement when it literally comes to everything, every goddamn thing. Just when we belong here and this is ours and, well, we won. Again, that's what it comes down to. If white people steal it in the past, like if they steal it through murder, rape, pillage, and plunder, notice how they immediately go to, well, we won it. We won it. Not we took it, not we stole it, not we raped and pillaged it. We won it. But then if some black Africans go and they try to take it back, then it's, oh my God, they're killing us, rape and pillage and plunder, and just the bloodshed. I'm like, for real? But that's how you got it when you took it. But then when they try to take it back, now you're going to sit there and now you're going to cry. I mean, it's like what I said about, it's like white people go around slapping people. And then when somebody slaps them back, The violence. I'm like, yo, you was the one running around slapping motherfuckers. Now somebody punches you in the face and shit. Now you, like it's like it's mind blowing. And then like what kills me is like all this self-righteous indignation. You know, they're just all this, just I mean, they're just like they're just so freaking flabbergasted and shit. I'm like, for real, like you're really gonna sit there and act like you're such the victim now. You know, I mean, the whole shit is just fucked up. I mean, I cannot stand white people trying to act like they're the fucking moral compass of I can't stand that shit. And then, and again, if they really want to talk about, justice and all this other shit, then I'm going to need you to have the same energy for this fucked up shit that y'all do that versus when black people respond, again, to the fucked up shit that y'all did. Because they always come through and act like I did that shit with 9/11. You know what I mean? Just completely ignore, 100 years of U.S. foreign policy and assassinating leaders and the fucking, the CIA doing this and doing that, all this other bullshit. Completely ignore the shit. Charlie Wilson's war type shit, right? Going up to espionage, all that crap. And then here comes the Muslims, Allahu Akbar, slams the planes into the building. What do white people say? They attacked us. They hate us because they hate our freedom. I'm like, for real. They hate you. Your freedom is why they did that. Not because of anything else. I like what Captain Solo said years ago. He was like, nah, man. He was like 19 guys with box cutters on a plane. I'm like, nah, they mad about something. You know what I mean? You need to figure out where that anger is coming from. But white people don't care where the anger comes from. They just care about the fact that they've been wronged as they look at it. I mean, just know this is why you need critical race theory. You need to have white people know the real history, of this nation, know the real history of what they've done. And if they want to sit there and say, no, it's boo-hoo, we're not going to teach our kids to hate them. So why? It's your history. It's what the fuck you did. Shit. It's what the fuck you did. You know what I mean? I mean, just want to tell you, like it's like raping a girl and then running around telling everybody it was consensual. What fucking sense does that make? And then literally she's sitting in front of you and you're sitting there and like mocking her. Oh, it was good for you, like it was good for me, right? Huh? You know what I mean? She still hasn't got over the being traumatized by the fucking rape. Like, that's white people, man. I swear, like, they kill me with this bullshit. They kill me with it. And again, it's just like I told Reindeer from South Africa years ago how hilarious it was when he literally was like, well, don't bring slavery over here. We didn't have any slaves in South Africa. But then he tried to claim, like, every American invention. See, they always want to claim the greatness. Well, white people, we've invented planes and trains and the locomotive and television and radio and x-rays and, all this shit that he was naming. And I'm just like, you know what? That's so hilarious because I thought you just got finished saying, don't bring that American history of white slavery over here because we didn't have any slaves in South Africa. Again, notice how he only wants to claim the positive of what other white people accomplished, but not the freaking negative. He doesn't want to claim that. That's why I get on black people about always talking about some ancient Egypt. I'm like, you're West African. Talk about Timbuktu. You know what I mean? And there was a clip of Bill Burr, because if y'all don't know, Bill Burr is married to a black woman. And Bill Burr, he had this, they have a hilarious, his wife is hilarious. He's hilarious. I'm saying Bill Burr, he did this interview thing and he was talking about because his wife was she was saying, yeah, Egypt was black and trying to claim Egypt. And look, I believe Egypt was black. Don't get me started on Nubia and the freaking Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt and the back and forth that they had and everything. But I'm saying the point that Bill Burr made is it's kind of ridiculous because it's like, he's like, I'm white, Scottish, Irish or whatever. And he's like, that's like me claiming Ferrari because they're white. Like it's a part of Europe. So, they're white. But again, this is what white nationalists will do. You know what I mean? Notice how like the Italians, when they came to America, they were discriminated against. Many of the gun laws in New York exist because of denying access to firearms, to Italians. I mean, they had cartoons about Italians. Oh, Italians, oh, they're terrible. Oh, Italians, they're not like other white people. They're the southern white people. Oh, Italians are this, that, and the third. Until they discover the greatness of Rome. Until they discover the greatness of Greece, then they want to claim the southern Europeans. Right? Then even Hitler jumps up on it and wants to claim, the freaking, the Southern Europeans and the greatness of Rome. And then, freaking makes, obviously the Third Reich makes that the same thing, tries to, make it look like it, like the Roman greatness and shit. I'm like, I thought y'all didn't fuck with the Italians and whatnot. Right? Sacco and Vanzetti, anybody? Right? Yeah, I learned about Sacco and Vanzetti in one of my critical race theory history classes. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, man, I'm telling you, man, like white people just do not want to own their shit. And it's like the world is just going to be persistently fucked up because they don't want to own their shit. And you got to sit there and have these conversations, and just, it's just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's so tiring and exhausting. The bottom line is the fucking Boers and Afrikaners, they went in there, they took the land, they exploited the people. They said, oh, you live over here in Bantu land and shit like that. You know what I mean? While we only build roads to extract resources out of your country, we're going to become rich and wealthy, which again, you can see it from the goddamn satellites. We're going to live in these first world conditions and having pools in our backyard and everything else like that. And you all just going to live in squalor and just accept your lot in life. And then you see all the chaos and all the shit that's going on TV. And then, you get white people to turn on TV and they're like, oh, see, the niggers are out of control. See, they're just like that. That's what they do. Right? They hit you with the Fox News shit. I'm like, for real? Like, no context as to why they're doing what they're doing. Like I said, same reason with the whole, the terrorist attacks and shit like that. See, they don't. The U.S. doesn't want to tell you about Charlie Wilson's war and the Mujahideen and arming many of these people and teaching them military tactics and all that stuff when those people were fighting, other people that the U.S. had beef with. And then they just dipped and then they just bounced, but they left them with the military equipment. They left them with the skill sets and all that shit. You know what I mean? Then those people said, wait a minute, we really got shafted. And then next thing you know, they're slamming planes in the buildings. And the American people, in all of their glorious ignorance, are sitting around going, well, I don't know why they did that. That's because they hate who we are as Americans. It's like, for real, that's why they did all that. There's more to it than that. But again, white people don't entertain, they don't dive deep into why the shit is. And they always have to spin it and put it in some context that it's because they hate, this is reverse racism. That's what it is. See, they're equally as racist, and then you get the projecting, right? They're racist. See, they hate white people. That's what it is. I'm like, not all the fucked up globalist shit that y'all been doing, right? None of that. That's what they've been doing. I mean, it's like even in Call of Duty. I played that new Call of Duty, and they got to that freaking, what was that shit called? The Highway of Hell, and they blamed it on the fucking Russians. I'm sitting there playing the game like, this isn't accurate. This is not accurate. You know what I mean? No, the freaking U.S., they had a bunch of fleeing, they were supposedly the fleeing families of soldiers and troops that were leaving freaking Iraq, and the U.S. bombed the front of the caravan, bombed the back of the caravan, and then did strafing runs with freaking A-10 Warhogs and shit. War crime type shit. But in the game, it's because... the Russians, they put it on the Russians, and they got a whole scene where Russians in the game are committing war crimes. And it's like, no, actually, that was the U.S. that did that shit. I've never seen propaganda so blatant. It's insane. Go ahead, go on Google or go on Wikipedia and type in Highway of Hell. Let me see if I can pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Let me see. Highway of Hell. Where is this? Highway of Hell. Is that what it's called? Let me see what it's called. No, Highway to Hell. No, now they're giving me songs and shit. What's the damn thing called? Highway. Hold on. No. Where's this shit at? I'm gonna have to find it. It's not called Highway of Hell. It's called Highway of Death. There it is. Highway of Death. The Highway of Death is a 6-lane highway between Kuwait and Iraq, officially known as the Highway 80. It runs from Kuwait City to the border town of Safwan in Iraq, and then on to the Iraqi city of Basra. The road was used by Iraqi armed divisions from 1990 invasion of Kuwait. It was repaired after the Gulf and used by the U.S. and British forces, blah, 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 blah. So during an American-led coalition offensive in the Persian Gulf, American and Canadian, British, French Air Force and ground forces attacked retreating Iraqi military personnel attempting to leave Kuwait on the night of February 26 to the 27th, 1991, resulting in the destruction of hundreds of vehicles and deaths of many of their occupants. Between 1,400 and 2,000 vehicles were hit and abandoned on the main Highway 80 north of Al-Jahra. The scene of devastation on the road are some of the most recognizable images of the war, and it has been suggested that they were a factor of President H.W. Bush's decision to declare a cessation of hostilities the next day. Many Iraqi forces successfully escaped across the Euphrates River, and the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency estimated that upwards of 70,000 to 80,000 troops from the defeated division in Kuwait might have fled in Basra, evading capture. Hold on, scroll. Let me see. Scroll. Now they're getting into the justifications of it. But anyway, you can read it. There's controversies. The attacks became controversial to outsiders, with some commentators arguing that they represented disproportionate use of force, saying that the Iraqi forces were retreating from Kuwait in compliance with the original UN Resolution 660 of August 2nd, 1990, and that the column included Kuwaiti hostages and civilian refugees. The refugees were reported to have included women and children, family members of pro-Iraqi PLO-aligned Palestinian militants and Kuwait collaborators who had fled shortly before the returning Kuwait authorities pressured nearly 200,000 Palestinians to leave Kuwait. So, again, the way that they justify their shit, again, this is this a part of critical race theory? Because most people don't know this shit. Most people sit there and they, it's freaking, it's like that movie Born on the 4th of July, and the way that people fantasize about military troops and shit, and, fucking running over some ridge in slow motion while carrying an American flag with halo music, playing in the background. Just stupid shit. You know what I mean? Like that's not how war is. War, you got the buzzing of bullets blowing past your head and shit. Guys on the ground screaming for their mama, like fucking Saving Private Ryan and shit. Like, that's what the shit is. But no. That's not the way it's depicted. They gotta recruit people. This shit is just so fucked up. It's so fucked up. Having to sit here and it's like, look, this shit was blatantly wrong. The land was fucking taken. It belongs to the freaking Africans who live there, and the shit needs to be rectified. If the South Africans want to stay there, fine, but help the Africans increase their freaking way of life. If, the white South Africans want to stay there, fine. You know what I mean? But no, nobody wants to do that shit. And then, the Indians, they get stuck in the middle of it and they side with the whites because obviously they don't want to give up their shit either. You know what I mean? So it's just a hot mess. And it just, as far you ask me what I think of South, it's a failed nation. It's failed. If that shit's going to be Mad Max and the Road Warrior, I'm telling you. Like you cannot have that much freaking poverty and the shit just be so. You can't have that. And just think like James Baldwin said, if I'm starving, you're in danger. And if you think my danger is your safety, well then, you're in trouble. It's just that simple. You cannot have that. I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to live, I'm over here in some, gated community and there's a pool and all this other shit. And the hood is like literally across the street. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking that when I go to the gas station that we both share, that maybe one time when I go there, I'm not going to get jacked for my shit. Like that's delusional. You see this bullshit in the city of Philadelphia. They gentrifying and, it's like the white people come in there walking their dogs at 10 o'clock at night and shit. It's like, fuck are you doing? Fucking like the fucking hood is right there. People are struggling. They're in poverty. It's the middle of fucking COVID. Fuck are you doing? And they're just like walking around, la 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 la, I'm white, la 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 la, and then they get fucked up. And then it's like, oh, see the niggers, and they're just like that. And I'm like, it's economic. You have, or you look like you have, and they don't. And it's been that way. You know what I mean? But you'll never see any, we need to correct this. That's why I said, if I was God, I would make freaking reincarnation mandatory. Everybody would be fucking reincarnated. You wouldn't know whether you coming back as a male or a female or black or white. Oh yeah, planet Earth, motherfuckers would fix that shit real quick. You mean I could come back as a starving Ethiopian child with a fly on my face? Yup. Oh shit, we gotta fix that shit. Oh, you mean I could come back as a small Indian child rummaging through, freaking garbage piles in Mumbai? Yup, you could come back as a starving or freaking, some Indian child rummaging through the freaking garbage piles. Oh my God, we gotta fix that shit. Oh, they fixed that real quick. And it probably would be a world of gender equality, or the gender roles would be like something that would be seriously agreed on. Like if you're a man, you got to do this. And if you're a woman, like you got to do this. That way it's like amicable and there's reciprocity and shit. That would be the only way that it would work. And you got to stay faithful to your partner until you die. And then if you want to date somebody else, you got to wait for resurrection. You know what I'm saying? Or wait for to be reincarnated in another body. You know what I mean? That's just all. I would make that shit mandatory, and it would be the most peaceful world that you've ever seen. We'd be flying around like the fucking Jetsons and shit. That's how it would be. But because you got all this bullshit ass fucking tribalism, and then you got the intellectual dishonesty of white people who don't want to own their shit. You know what I mean? We get this crap. You know what I mean? And they want to sit there and they want to claim that they're victims and, no, see, the black, they would be, they would be in the same condition if we didn't come here. They want to swear. Even, so what if they was like, in other words, first off, black people didn't live in, highly congested, overpopulated cities. Europeans fucking created that bullshit. And then, the issue that they got with malaria and stuff like that, again, it wasn't that big of an issue because you didn't have a mosquito couldn't jump from one person to another person to another person to another person. Black people lived in smaller, population centers. And they were in balance with nature, just like the Native Americans, and they lived off of the land for millennia, thousands of years. It's fucking Europeans that are the ones that are out of sync with nature. That's why, and it's so crazy. It's like all this shit that I'm saying, European white people, they already know this to be true. They already know that they're out of sync with everybody else on the damn planet, and they're out of sync with nature, and they already know this, which is why they constantly make movies about it, like Fern Gully and The Last Rainforest, or make movies like District B9 and shit. That's why they make movies like that. Because it helps them cope and deal with their white guilt. Again, going back to Thomas Jefferson, and his quote. What was his quote? I'll read it again because I put it in another video. What did Thomas Jefferson say? Thomas Jefferson said, and this is about slavery. He said, "But as it is, we have the wolf by the ear, and we can neither hold him nor safely let him go. Justice is in one scale and self-preservation in the other." Thomas Jefferson. So, again, white people try to act, they try to fake, try to pretend like they fucking clueless and they don't know what the fuck is going. Bullshit. They know exactly what the fuck is going on. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, they think, oh, well, if we throw up some symbolism, or if we throw up a gesture, or if we name, today Juneteenth or something, if we do this, then, maybe they'll forgive us and we won't have to dig in our pockets. And we won't have to correct any of this shit. And we won't have to put in the same amount of work that it took to fucking create these freaking systems that white people now benefit off of. But do I have any hope that white people are actually going to own that shit? Fuck no. Fuck no, they're not going to own that shit. There's just so many things. Think about being a white person and you don't even really know the actual history. You don't know what was actually done and how other people were really systematically fucked over, and you're running around thinking that it's all about your own personal responsibility. You don't really understand that these were things that were backed by the government. They were backed by the government. Black people couldn't move into Levittown, and that was sanctioned by the government. And white people, they don't know these things. They literally don't know. Go run up on a white person and be like, "What is COINTELPRO?" Just ask him. Just do you know what COINTELPRO was? You know what I'm saying? Do you know who Larry Threadgill was? He was the guy that Richard Aoki reported to. Do you know who that was? No. They don't have a fucking clue. So if they don't have any idea, then how can you have an honest conversation with them about race and race relations and everything? Literally, their idea of history is, there was slavery and it was bad. And did you know that black people had slaves too, and that they sold their own people into slavery? But anyway, yes, there was slavery and it was bad. But then, due to the benevolence of some very good white people, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. And then, we just fast forward, and Martin Luther King gave the "I Have a Dream" speech, and racism was over, and it's been over ever since the 60s. Don't you know? Don't you know? So, whatever conditions black people are living in, that's all their faults. What are you talking about? It's just because black people are lazy and they don't want to, they don't want to do, they're just out here breathing up all the white man's air. God, how much, look, we give black people welfare. We give black people welfare out of the goodness of our hearts. Isn't that reparations in and of itself? Really? Seriously, that's white folks out here. That's how they process the shit. And then when you start talking about critical race theory and they start hearing how the shit was, really systematically laid out, and they start feeling guilty and they start feeling sad and shit, they start having seizures and shit. They're like, oh my God, I can't handle it. I can't handle all this truth. Oh my God, you mean to tell me that I come from a bloodline of evil people? No, it's not true. No. They start going crazy. They lose it. They fucking lose it. And I don't have any sympathy for that. White people want to feel some type of way because they go, oh, my ancestors were fucking evil. Black people got to sit there and they got to deal with the fact that, we're a conquered people, and whatever our freaking ancestors did was not in the collective best interest of black people. Whatever it was, our tactics, I mean, maybe we should have moved the bishop and instead we moved the pawn and then the queen got taken and shit like that. Whatever chess move should have happened 100 years ago didn't fucking happen. And so as a result, black people are currently in the predicament that they're in. We gotta sit there and we gotta deal with that reality. So for white people to sit there and deal with the reality that, yeah, your ancestors did some evil ass shit, like, I'm like, fucking deal with it. It's the reality. It's the truth. Whatever happened to all those phrases, Ben Shapiro style, facts over feelings, facts over feelings. Yeah, but y'all don't like the facts that don't support the narrative that, America is the greatest country in the world and we're just the bestest people ever. Fucking white people, man. I swear, man. I swear. Y'all don't want to own shit. These same people running around, personal responsibility. The same people running around that. They don't want to take any personal responsibility, for, the systems that were put in place that benefited them. See, people really don't know how to, like, if somebody does some fucked up shit for you, like, people really don't know how to, like, deal with that. If somebody does something fucked up that benefits you, you know what I mean? That's got to be like the hardest thing to actually give back. You know what I mean? Like if somebody, that's like somebody running up and they rob a fucking charity or something like that. They go and they rob a charity. And then they show up at your house and then they give you the money. Like, yo, I'm going to give you like half of this shit if you don't say nothing. Right? Just don't say anything. Nobody saw me except for you. I'll give you half and just, a lot of people struggle with that. Because they're like, man, I mean, this is benefiting me. I mean, hey, $50,000 more in my pocket. Hey, nobody finds out. Like, hey, you ever see that shit where the people get the money out of the ATM and the ATM just throws up $2 million and then they just go on a shopping spree? Like they're like, well, shit, that was the ATM's problem. That's not my problem. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just the ATM, or actually, no, it's not the ATM. It's freaking the money. Somehow the money gets wired to the wrong account, and then the bank struggles to get it back, and then the person is spending this shit like it's theirs. It's kind of like that. I mean, people they do not want to give up their advantage, but the whole idea that we're gonna have this fair and equitable world and somehow black people are just going to magically catch up with all this sort of inequality, that where white people can just pull the plug. I had to explain this to a white guy the other day. We were talking and I said, he has got a business. And I was like, I'm like, white supremacy is like this. It's like, let's say you fucked some chick back in high school when you were 15 years old and you fucked her good, and she doesn't like you for whatever reason. You skeeted in her eye, you know what I mean? He came in my eye, and she tells her husband, and her husband is some big wig somewhere that's got all type of connections. He's bigger than you know what I mean? And because you fucked his wife in high school, he feels some type of way about it, knows who you are, right? Sees all your internet profiles and everything, and then he plots against you and makes some phone calls, and all of a sudden the business deal that you were just about to close just vanishes and goes poof. I was like, that's the power of white supremacy. That's how white supremacy actually moves. You know what I mean? And he couldn't say anything to what I'm saying because he knows that shit goes down like that. Motherfuckers make a phone call, that's the end of that. He knows that things go down like that, so he couldn't deny it. I'm like, that there's people out there that have that type of power. And when you talk about the whole racial group thing, because the economics and race is baked in together. I mean, why do you think you had people that came up, after when the slaves were free? They say, look, if you're going to incorporate them into society, you gotta give them 40 acres and a mule. You can't just okay, slaves, you're free with nothing but the shirts on your backs. That's not going to work. We talked about Europe, and we talked about white people, they love just using people. They got the British colonies all over the freaking place. You know what I mean? They bring them into, Europe and whatnot, namely the UK. And then, once you're part of the EU, you can go and travel and everything. But I know they had the whole Brexit shit. But anyway, but it's like, they bring these people in, for cheap labor. And everything's cool, right? Because you got all these other third world countries, second world countries, right? Because again, these are the places that European countries exploited a lot of times. And so they come there to work and they're like, hey, at least I have a job. I didn't have a job when I was in, I don't know, Bangladesh. I didn't have a job when I was in, some, just name a place, right? And so they come there and now they got a job. But see, the issue becomes what? The children of those first wave immigrants that were working the shitty jobs and scrubbing the toilets and all that other stuff. Because the children have a totally different sense of entitlement. The children are like, yo, I'm fucking Swedish. Like, I speak the language. Yeah, my parents, they didn't speak the language. They worked the crummy jobs and everything else like that. But like, okay, what's my status? I'm a Swedish citizen. And then the white Swedes are like, no, you're not. They start spazzing. No, you're not. You know what I mean? They speak the language. And again, like I was explaining, to the white guy, I was like, and they understand what it is to be a Swede more than the Swedes do. They understand that shit way, way more because they have to understand the culture of the country that they're in. Right. But then you also have an assimilation problem, where the European, they bring these people in, just to work. And then when they have children, they don't set anything up in the society to assimilate the children. You can't just have people show up and work and you don't assimilate. Then when the young Muslims, for example, when they get radicalized, right, because they're marginalized in a nation where they speak the language, they know what's going on, they feel and sense the microaggressions and the bigotry and all that other stuff. And then next thing you know, when they're screaming Allahu Akbar, shooting the place up, you know what I mean? What do the white people do? Oh, see, that's just how they are. That's why we shouldn't have let them in the country. They don't want to talk about any of the shit that they did. They don't want to talk about any of the freaking the non-assimilation shit that they did. I'm like, so you brought them here for the parents to work cheap labor. They had a bunch of kids, and then the kids, you have no way of really assimilating them into the society. You didn't plan that far out. It's just like black people. African Americans are an inconvenient population, right? We were chattel labor. We were no higher than, horses and donkeys and chickens and shit. This country never really, considered, what to do with the slave population if slavery were to ever end. It wasn't thought out. Shit, what do we do with them? We don't want them living around us. Fuck, what do we do with them? Damn. Well, we don't want them having guns because then they might possibly do unto us as we've done unto them. Remember Nat Turner? Can't have that shit. So we got to make black codes and come up with all type of gun laws and shit. I mean, even the judge during the Dred Scott case said that shit. The judge during the Dred Scott case, basically was like, well, if we recognize them as citizens, then the Negro will be able to, anyone of the Negro race will be able to go about and walk around and, anywhere and everywhere with a loaded firearm. Like he was all, like, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm saying he was all, scared of that shit. They'd have all the rights that any other white man would have. Clutch the pearls. And that's why I say that argument alone supports the idea that the Second Amendment is an individual right. It had nothing to do with a militia because his fear was based on the individual rights that white men had being extended to what? A freed slave. You see? So that tells you that it was an individual right independent of the militia. Because black people weren't a part of the militias, right? I mean, black people did fight in the Revolutionary War, but I'm saying we weren't, our personhood was not recognized. So black people weren't considered a part of the militias. But then the minute that a slave becomes free, the biggest concern is he'll be able to have the same rights as a white man and be able to individually possess a firearm. Again, that tells you it has nothing to do with a militia. And it's an individual, inalienable right. You see? I mean, it's like, look, White people, they got some beautiful ideals. But when it comes to applying those ideas across the board, they're horrible at it. They're horrible at it. They really don't want to do it. They want, white rights and white privileges to be just that, white. Yeah, we believe in all those perfect ideals based on Judeo-Christianity and all that bullshit. You know what I mean? But as it pertains to the non-whites, like, no, we don't subscribe to that shit. Nah, this is for white people. The benevolence of Christianity is for white people. That's not for anybody else. The idea of your personhood and you being a human, that's for white people. That's not for anybody else, right? This is how they operate. You're those people over there. They're something different, right? And this is why the whole race issue is just going to consist because white people are not intellectually honest. You're not going to get it out of their media, their mainstream media. You're not going to get it from them. They're going to try to, weasel their way around to try to make it look like, we're being benevolent and we're doing the best that we can to be fair and equitable. But no, you're not. At the end of the day, white people want to maintain power. And any situation where white people aren't, the dominant force in the room, they start freaking out. Go read that article, Ghost of White People Past. It's not about, this sort of, again, the meritocracy. Like I said, with the sellout Asians on Fox News and shit like that. I'm like, Asians are doing so much better. White people love making that a talking point. But then when you go and you look at the number of Asian CEOs, if it was a meritocracy, then we should see way more Asians in leadership positions with all the awesome degrees and straight A's, that they've been getting and whatnot, and all the winning of spelling bees. But we don't see that. You actually see more Indians than you do East Asians, but then they use East Asians as the quintessential model minority that has the highest grades, when actually it's the dark-skinned Indians that are actually getting some of the highest scores and whatnot. All right? So, and shout out to the sister that recently won the spelling bee. But it's just exhausting. Like, don't fucking come on the internet and then piss on me and tell me it's rain. You know what I'm saying? It's like, not that I want anybody to piss on me, but I can deal with somebody who's like, yeah, I'm pissing on you. What you gonna do about it, right? I can deal with that, right? I can deal with that. But don't come on and you're pissing on me and then you're telling me, that it's unicorn tears. You know what I'm saying? Like, get the fuck, I can't stand that bullshit. God, I can't stand that bullshit. Like the hairs on my soul go up. Not even on my body, on my soul go up. God, I can't stand that shit. But anyway, I'm done with this rant. This long video. I'm tired. That's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.